Welcome, folks, to another learning series with Mr. Knight. Now, today's lesson will be on pollution. Now, folks, let's look at what is pollution. Now, pollution is the process by which the natural balance of the environment is being disturbed due to an accumulation of waste. We call these waste pollutants. So let's take a look what pollutants are. Now, pollutants are substances that cause pollution when they are released in the environment. So any substance that can cause any change within the environment, it can be called a pollutant. And since we have so many different possibilities, we can have many different types of pollution. So let's look at a list of pollution here. Now, the types of pollution listed here are the only one we're going to deal with today, but remember, we can have many more. We can have many more types of pollution, but we're only going to focus on these five, which I will say these are the five main types. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at here is water pollution. Now, water pollution is simply when the natural balance or content of the water is changed. Okay, so once the natural content is changed, then it can be classified as pollution. Now, water pollution is mainly caused by these pollutants, such as fertilizers, sewage, pesticides, and crude oil. Now, folks, these pollutants, they have effects. So let's look at each. Now, fertilizer can cause eutrophication. Now, we dealt with eutrophication in a previous lesson, in the lesson that marked or titled Food Web and Food Chain. Now, eutrophication is simply now when algae grow excessively, what you call algal blooming, due to absorption of nutrients or release of nutrients within the water body. So once nutrients are released in water, the algae absorb these nutrients and grow rapidly. And please remember that algae, they are plant-like, so they behave similarly to plants, and they absorb nutrients and will grow rapidly. Now, fertilizers can also cause poisoning because of the chemical makeup of fertilizer. They can lead to poisoning in marine organisms as well. Okay, it's also important to note that eutrophication, folks, they can lead to a number of problems, okay, such as increased bacteria, diseases, and so on. All right, so sewage, which is the next pollutant that we're dealing with right here, sewage, just like fertilizer, will lead to eutrophication. Now, the reason why sewage will lead to eutrophication because sewage contains a lot of organic matter. Okay, so in other words, you can say sewage is like organic manure. And so it will contain a lot of nutrients that will be absorbed by the algae and lead to eutrophication. Now, sewage, because sewage is a kind of animal remain, human feces, and so on. And so it can lead to diseases because in feces, you will have a lot of pathogens. Okay, you will have a lot of pathogens or disease causing organisms. And of course, sewage will give off a certain odor, right? Especially if bacteria are present and producing hydrogen sulfide. You will smell sewage from a great distance, which is quite unpleasant. Okay, and pesticides, folks, and the dust sticker pin right here is that pesticides can be generally of three types. One, herbicide that kill plants, insecticides that kill insects, and fungicides that kill fungus or fungi. Now, typically speaking, pesticides are poison. So generally, pesticides will poison living organisms. Also, if pesticides remain in the organism and not breaking down, or you may describe being persistent chemicals, it can lead to a scenario which we call bioaccumulation. So that phenomenon of bioaccumulation is simple when these chemicals remain in living organisms and build up or increase in concentration along the food chain. You can check out the food chain video or listen, and you get a better understanding of bioaccumulation. Now, crude oil or oil generally can cause a blockage of sunlight or prevent sun from entering the water. And remember now, algae that are useful, you have useful algae in the water that some fish will feed on. Okay, such even as the conch feed on algae. And if there's not enough sunlight to penetrate in the water, algae will not be able to photosynthesize. And if algae are not photosynthesizing, then some fish will be suffering and eventually may die because of lack of food. Okay? Crude oil, because of its content, or oil generally, can also lead to poisoning in some organisms. Okay? Also, crude oil or oil could lead to hyperthermia, such as in birds, because when birds they try to capture fish, for example, and there's an oil spill, then the oil will catch on their feathers, and their feathers become so dense and they're unable to fly. They will stay there, become extremely cold, and they will die of hyperthermia. So let's now take a pictorial journey in looking at these effects. Now, if you look at these pictures, you will see a great mercury dump of sewage in a big, large body of water, which is quite disturbing, folks. And of course, you can imagine if you have marine organisms in this area, such as fish, definitely they cannot capture any food, they cannot see, and of course, sunlight cannot be able to penetrate in these. So definitely, you will get a very bad odor because of lack of oxygen in this water. So the water becomes stagnated and lead to a increase in bacteria, which will increase the odor. All right, and also this one here will be in the middle, which is an effect of oil spill over water. And again, you can see no light can able to penetrate that. And of course, a bird being covered with oil. And of course, you can imagine the bird will unable to fly because of the oil that covering it, which would be such a very devastating effect on these organisms. And of course, the general picture is showing you the seepage or the leakage of nutrients within the water body that causing a lot of algae to grow. Okay, so let's go now to another type of pollution. And the next we're going to look at is the air pollution. So air pollution, which is simply, again, the disturbance of the natural balance of the air in the atmosphere. Now, some common pollutants for air pollution will be carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, carbon, which is soot, and sulfur dioxide, and also oxides of nitrogen, such as nitrogen dioxide. Now, generally, air pollution is caused by gases, okay, and sometimes gas could mix with solid as well and cause air pollution. Now, let's look at these, the effect of some of these gases. Now, carbon dioxide generally will lead to greenhouse effect, and if you know what greenhouse effect is when the heat or the radiation is trapped on the earth and lead to the earth becoming much warmer, which lead to a phenomenon we call global warming. Now, carbon dioxide could also lead to acid rain. When carbon dioxide mixes with water or rainwater, it could form carbonic acid and the water become acidic, and it could damage buildings, plants, and even deplete nutrients from the soil. So the effects could be so large and wide for these gases. Carbon monoxide, which is a very serious gas that is produced from incomplete combustion of fossil fuel or any fuel, okay? And carbon monoxide could lead to a phenomenon known as carbon monoxide poisoning. If you become poisoned by carbon monoxide, what is going to happen, it will prevent your blood from taking up oxygen. And when your blood is deprived of oxygen, then you become unconscious. Become unconscious, over a period of time and losing oxygen in the blood, you can also die, sadly. Now, it can also lead to a greenhouse effect as well, similarly to carbon dioxide, because it will be a ozone gas. Okay. Now, sulfur dioxide, which is one of the main source of acid rain. So we wanted to know that, folks, that sulfur dioxide is a main source of acid rain. Once it reacts with water, it will form sulfuric acid. And sulfuric acid could damage building. And of course, if you expose to sulfur dioxide over a long period of time, it could cause respiratory problem and also damage your lungs. Okay. Now, oxides of nitrogen, for example, nitrogen dioxide, it could also lead to acid rain again, could also cause respiratory problems, and of course, it could also cause smog. And smog is when it becomes foggy and blurry because of a mix of the gas and solid. It will block your vision, especially in the early mornings or even at night. Okay, so let's now jump into another type of pollution. And now we're going to look at land pollution. Now, land pollution, folks, is simply now a disturbance of the land by these substances. Generally speaking, the most obvious type of land pollution will be garbage. Okay, that's the main one that you'll see generally, but it can also cause by pesticides and fertilizers. So let's take a little look right here. Is that pesticides can poison, that we mentioned before, similarly to when we look at water. So pesticides could lead to poison, could lead to bioaccumulation, and once those things are happening, once you have bioaccumulation or poisoning, you can have a decrease in biodiversity. Why? Because once you poison organism and they die, you can lead to extinction of certain species. Okay, and so therefore poison is very dangerous on land. Okay, fertilizers, which is another serious one. Now, fertilizer could damage plant roots. Now, and as you know, that fertilizers will have a high salt content. So, hence, if you use a lot of fertilizer or overuse fertilizer, what will happen? Around the roots will have a lot of salt content, and it will cause osmosis to go in the opposite direction. Instead of water going in the roots of the plant, water will leave from the roots of a plant into the soil and cause the plant to wilt. Okay, fertilizer itself, sometimes if exposed to air, can produce gas, and gas could damage the plant leaves. Okay, also fertilizers could leach into water, which we look at water pollution before, and lead to eutrophication. Now, garbage, which is very unsightly, folks. Garbage is serious, and this is where we need to put more effort now, folks, to prevent this type of thing, because we can control our solid waste. Our solid waste, folks, we need to put more effort into disposal of these waste. Now, for example, a solid waste could now become a habitat for different pests such as rodents, mosquitoes, right? Because these solid waste could capture water that mosquito could breathe in quite frequently, could lead to dengue fever, malaria, and many more diseases, right? And even rodents, rats that can now enter our homes and go on our food and lead to leptospirosis, which causes us to become very ill. And generally, folks, oh my God, garbage is just unsightly. It's just unsightly. All right, just take a pictorial journey again through this one. And so, folks, as you look at this site, it is not pleasant. Generally not pleasant, okay? And so the first picture here, you will notice now a equipment using pesticides over a large area of land, especially in commercial farming. And here will be use of fertilizers, and of course disposal of garbage any and anywhere. And this picture was taken beside a rocky shore, or on a rocky shore. And folks, it is really not a good sight. Okay, really not a good sight. All right, so let's jump back into that. All right. Now, I wanted just to bring you back a little bit for air pollution, which look at it before, but I want to even show you a next pictorial with air pollution, folks. And of course, these are some disturbing sights again. If you also remember the Amazon rainforest, which been burnt down, and a lot of smoke was given off, a lot of smog, and all of these things. So land pollution, air pollution, kind of tied together, if you notice it, because you destroy the land, you burn stuff, and you release gases in the atmosphere that are not good. You can imagine all of these smog and particles enter your lungs over a period of time, folks. Then you can imagine the detrimental effect that it will have on us. So, folks, I'm showing you these pictures for us to be more conscious and aware of the effects of these types of pollution, folks. All right, let's jump back to the list and go into another type of pollution, which is noise. And I know most of us do not consider noise as being a pollution because we love our music and we love our boom boxes. Now, noise pollution, folks, is pretty much disturbance of the environment or disturbance of the vibration in the environment. Now, the pollutant is generally excessive vibration. These vibrations could come from our homes, which is domestic. It could come from factories, which are industrial. And it can also, simply because we're outdoor having parties and playing our music for recreational, gathering and making a lot of noise. Sometimes we enjoy ourselves and we do not consider the effects of this type of pollution. So let's go right into it. Now, excessive vibration, folks, can affect the animal communication, such as in dolphins. Dolphins depend on vibration to navigate themselves through water. Whales do the same things. And some birds, they listen to certain type of chirping, certain type of vibration to capture their food and so on, right? Or capture their prey. Okay? It can also affect navigation, such as in bats, because bats, they depend on a system called echolocation. So when they make their noise and or produce sound, the sound will hit onto object and vibrate back to them, and they can navigate themselves through caves and so on because they can echolocate. Okay? And if you never think about this, oh yes, if you never think about this one, folks, when you're playing the music and dancing and having fun, you can damage parts of your ears. Okay, and not just your ears as well, but even animals. Some of us have pets at homes, and sometimes you play your boombox and making noise and you're having parties and all of that and going on. But yes, you're damaging your pest ears. So let's take a look. Just a little sample of what is going on here. So industry, using every machinery, trains, so machinery, cars. So the more we developed and become more populated, the more we use these things, and of course we give off a lot of vibration and disturb the natural environment, and some organisms will eventually have to migrate because they can't live around too much noise because they've been affected where to go, how to go, and what to catch. And so some of them are suffering, cannot find food because they're confused with these noise. And definitely when you're partying and having fun, you're affecting other organisms, so you need to be mindful. Now, we're going to look at now our last type of pollution. Now, folks, I know it's modern world. I know it's modern. But we need to consider these effects. So first, let's jump into it. Light pollution. And of course, light pollution is when we produce too much light or change light intensity of the environment. Now, folks, this is generally caused, notice the pollutant here said this is generally a drastic change in light intensity, especially the use of artificial lights. Okay, so let's look at some of the effects that maybe we didn't consider now, folks. Producing light 24 hours. You have light in the day, you have light in the night. And of course, you have some cities that always bright, never sleep. Okay, and so let's look at it. Light that you're producing artificially can affect the photosynthetic rate in plants and plant-like organisms. Remember, during the night, plants tend to respire more. So if you're producing light right through, then the plant will start to photosynthesize more or at the same rate, and there's a low rate of respiration. Hence, the plant will not able to use its food to reproduce, to produce parts, and to produce proper fruiting. Okay, and so some of us have plants in our home, and you keep it under light for 24 hours without giving the plant time to decrease photosynthesis and increase respiration, and hence it could affect the natural biology, the biological processes within the plant. Also, a next thing to note that most of us never even considered is that too much light or artificial light in the environment can affect the effectiveness of nocturnal feeders. Some animals feed at night. And when we're producing these bright lights in the cities, then some of these organisms, they are tricked, and they are now cannot figure out when it's night or day, and hence some of them cannot find proper food, and when they do find food, it's not enough, and eventually they become malnourished and can die. And so, of course, a pictorial journey again through this, our nightlife. We love the nightlife so much, but we do not consider these bright lights like in Vegas and some bright cities, and we produce LED lights and colorful lights and street lights, and hence we are enjoying it. But the organism and the environment, they are suffering. They are really suffering. So folks, I want to consider these effects of pollution. I hope it has an impact on you, and I hope you can use this information to answer some examination question. And now we're at the end, folks, and I'm going to leave it to you. Please be aware and conscious of your environment and how we pollute our environment and treat our environment. I thank you for being here, and please continue learning some science with Mr. Knight by simply subscribing. See you in the next lesson.